Hello. In this video we're going to dismantle bit by bit these illustrious Shimano LX M560 shifters. Particularly like these ones as they kind of looked like the XTR M900s and arguably performed just as well. So I think we're going to begin with the 3-speeded side, and then we'll move on for the second part of the video on the 7-speed side. So this one right here, in fact both of them have similar issues. They're not returning, they're not shifting correctly. The interior, or probably the oil grease, has gone old and is stopping everything from functioning. Let's begin. Before anything, make sure you downshift. Obviously I can't, but if you can, it's preferable. So there'll be a Phillips or JIS screw just underneath, and that will give us access to remove the plastic cover. Next we've got the this number 10 nut that we need to remove, and to take that off it will be clockwise. Let's lift up this part, and underneath that is a copper spacer, I believe. Yeah, it's just very stuck. And now we've got that return spring that we can remove. So it's hooked on right there. And now we can lift up this lever. Underneath it there's a nylon spacer. It's very sticky though. There you go, got it off. And right here is the pull, and this is typically the number one issue with these shifters. They get hardened and stuck, and then they don't move anymore. And this one is solid stuck. Can't even move it with my hands. So there's a little E-clip there to remove. Managed to break it loose, and there's a return spring underneath. There, got it. Underneath that we have a bushing. There's another C-clip right there to take off, and underneath there there'll be eventually another return spring for this lever. Underneath that there's a copper washer. There's two very thin spacers, but I'm going to remove this spring first. You can finally take off this lever. There's a plastic seal. So let's take off this tiny little spring. I think I'm going to remove this barrel adjuster. Which should allow me to remove that cover on the side. Let's remove the pull. 1, there doesn't seem to be any resistance, so that will definitely be our starting point. I think I can just now remove that. There you go. The cam and the sprocket, and the sprocket can indeed be removed as well. There's probably a bushing there, yeah. So those 3 parts. And we have our spring underneath. Now this main part, let's say the axle, can be removed using a number 4 Allen key, hex key. However, I believe it's very important which position you have this in, so I'm going to leave it because it's not going to change anything. But if you do want to take it off, it's from the back there. For the cleaning, my favourite method is just putting a little bit of degrease, so you can use WD-40 as well, and dipping the objects bit by bit and cleaning them using just a paper towel and some cotton buds as well for the more hard to get parts, and that's it. All globally cleaned. Now for the reassembly, I'm going to use some just use any regular grease. You can use Teflon grease since there's plastic here, but it's not necessary. In fact, Shimano now uses their own grease inside their shifters. So on this first cam part, you've got that spring, and there's one tip that's sticking out that's going to go onto the little slit that's on the side. On top of the cam, you had the sprocket, so where there's the number 5 that's facing towards us, and that's going on the right like that. Push down. And then finally we have this ridged bushing that seats on the top. And the other tip of that spring that's sticking out is going to go into the hole right there at the back. So I'm going to have this first pull the longer one, and we're going to recline that bit back. I'm going to put it in the same position that I had it in when I took it off. Hopefully that's the correct position. And then we've got the smaller one. Like so. And then we've got the little return spring for this larger pull. So the long tip goes downwards, and we are going to seat it on top, and the longer tip kind of seats there in the front and the side. And keeping everything in order, we'll put the plastic cover that goes here back on. And there's the barrel adjuster. Grab the seal, and we're going to place it there. We then have our lever, put a bit of grease underneath it, and that's going to, for one seat where that seal is, there's a spot for it, and that hook part's kind of going in between the 2 pulls. And it should also kind of lodge itself onto that bushing that we placed before. Next are these very, very, very thin copper washers. And here we've got one copper washer, thicker one. Let's place that on. We then have the spring. So that hook part needs to go latching on top of that pull. And the other end, there's a little tip that's facing downwards. That's going to go towards where the hook is. So I'm just using a flat-headed screwdriver to kind of help me get it towards the hook. I think it's latched on. Yeah, it's latched on, and you want that to go around the spacer. Next we've got this part, there's a little tab there that's facing downwards. Make sure that's nice and seated. We've got a little clip to reinsert. It's on. And the next thing, we're going to have that little tip there of that pull right there. We're going to need to latch that onto the that part right there. And this is quite hard sometimes to get on. Got it. And there's a bushing there that I'm going to put on. Grab the second lever, put the grease on that. So you'll take the return spring. The shorter tip is going to go downwards. And then we have our pull. And the long tip of the spring goes in front of the pull. And you should be able to now recline it, and how much better that is than it was originally. And finally the little clip. And underneath there's the nylon washer to reinsert. You can work a bit the spring so that it works smoothly. And I thought I'd just point out the little tip of that spring there goes kind of here. You don't want it to go towards there. Now grab your the mechanism. So that pull is going to be pushing against towards that direction where there's that number 5. There. Finally, we got the copper washer. Seats there. We then have our return spring for that lever. So the little tip of that spring that's facing downwards kind of hooks up there. And then we're going to need to recline that part of the spring all the way back towards the top part of that pivot. Now make sure that spring's not overlapping as we're about to insert this ring. Yeah, make sure it's nice and laying flat. If you want, you can put some Loctite. This one doesn't even seem to have any. And we're going to put that nut, screw it on anti-clockwise. Now don't do that too tight, you want to make sure it's all working. Working very well, in fact. So basically you just want to tighten that until you feel some kind of, if there's any type of resistance, it means it's too tight. Then slap on the cover and then work on number 7 speed. So 7 speed, let's open up the cover underneath. We're going to remove the nut, and in fact the nut was already loose. Not a good sign. So spring tip is latched on there, and the other tip is on this plate instead of on a pivot like the last one. So we're going to release the tension on that spring that's unlatch it. There you go. Let's remove the plate. Spacer. Bushing, sorry. There is a thin space underneath that. We can lift up the lever. So now there's a spring latched onto a raised tab. Let's undo that. I'm going to lift up that lever. Plastic cover. Seal, sorry. Here you'll have there a little E-clip to remove again. I'm going to remove this barrel adjuster, which should be able to allow us to take off this cover. So I'm removing the top port, and there's another one underneath that after. And there's a little E-clip there to take off. Take off the spring. The spring was quite tensioned underneath that. So I've just taken off the spring. That tip there, I'm pretty sure was initially in that hole and not that one. I think for this one, it's necessary to remove that because when we're going to reinstall the cam to tension up the spring, we're going to need to have some leverage or some spacing, and this gets in the way. Right, so same procedure as before for the cleaning, greasing, etc. So grab the cam and the spring. That little bit that's sticking out is going to go into that little slit there underneath. Just pop that there for now. You can try and insert it. There you go. All the way in. Now that tip is eventually be going into that. There's like a small hole there, but our issue was with this right here. So the tip of that spring is going to go into the hole on the right. Okay, got that in. Now this part here, once facing downwards, is going to go towards the north part on our shifter. So if it's facing like that, that's where that hole is. and the cam is stopping here like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to twist this round, tensioning up the spring, and then this should go into the correct position, and the little tip of that spring that's now sticking out will go into the hole right there. So to do that, I'm positioning the cam there against that pivoting part, and we're going to twist this shaft into the correct position, and then it will push in. Okay, I think I've got it. It's quite hard initially, but it slid in. Just check that's. Yeah, so the spring I can see is in that hole, and it should have gone to the correct position as well. Excellent. Now we can put the sprocket back on. So there is only one side. I'm trying to find if there's an identifiable way. No. So it kind of goes this. There's one tooth that's larger, so you know that's the correct position. And there you go. Now this cam will not stop her popping out of place, so what you want to do is screw it back on. Right, next, this will still be popping out, by the way, but you really want this to be laying flat against the surface. We have that little spring for the pulls, so the short tip is going to go into the hole on the right side. Put a bit of grease in that. So we have this pull. That tip of that spring, the longer side, is going to need to go in front of that part. And to do that, you kind of need to recline the spring back, so you might need to get a flat-headed screwdriver. Once you've got this part here, you put the clip above this pull, and then we'll have the next one. And this pull will be facing this way. And now I'm going to put this cover on. Make sure again that the cams are fully flat surfaced against the body. Otherwise you'll have shifting issues later on. So I put a bit of grease on this little metallic part. The tab's going to face upwards towards us, and that top part of the pivot for the pulls is going to go through that hole. Here again, there's going to be an E-clip, so that might be hard to get it underneath, to get it like underneath where there's the little spacing for it. But you might need to push this plate down. Right, next we've got the that kind of plastic seal. Just going to go there. And then we've got the lever. The tab part facing downwards is going to go just here in between the spacing. And this part's going to sit on the, I don't know what to call that. Oops. So we got that bushing and a little spacer. Let's pop those back on. Very thin spacer. And so the bushing is going to integrate onto the lever. Let's do that now. Perfect. So now we've got this spring, so that hook part is going to go where that tab is, right there. Grab the lever, we've got the little return spring, so one tip there is going to go into the hole there on our left. And it hooks behind. Then grab the pull, and it will be going in that position. And the other tip of the spring is going to hook over it. Finally, we've got that little E-clip again to go on top. And now you're going to kind of recline the sprocket, the pullback, and it's going to seat. Where is it again? I think it's going to seat here, and it's going to be pushing that part upwards. Like so. Yeah, that looks good. And on top of that, you have a very thin washer and bushing. So the washer seats over that bushing, and then we're going to seat it this way into the lever. Now we've got that spring, so the hook part's going to go right there in the corner. Hook that onto the lever. There you go. We're then going to put this metallic plate on the top, and the other tip of that spring should go roughly there, and then we're going to bring it back towards that little bit there. And you want that to lay flat. We're going to put the nut first, and then we're going to tension that spring so the nut goes anti-clockwise. Like so. Tighten that up a little bit. I think that should be okay. I'm going to do it too tight. And now that I've put everything back together, it was literally that. So just the misplacement of a clip stopped it from functioning as it should. So once you've done that, you can pretty much tighten everything. Not too tight. You basically want to tighten this up until it's not shifting anymore. And yeah, you can put Loctite thread locker on that nut if you want. Put the cover. So there you go. I hope this helped you service your Shimano LX M560 shifters. Until next time, thank you for listening. Peace out.